I couldn't handle the thought of dealing with a woman whose pregnancy made her look huge, while I would have to raise the baby alone and constantly see her big 9-month pregnant belly. He looked at me with disdain and had a smirk on his face, as if he was expecting this situation. Even though I knew this would happen, I quickly went to my room and came back with some divorce papers. I showed them to Anand without hesitation. He looked shocked and asked, "What's this all of a sudden?" "Well, it was your idea. Just sign it quickly. I'll submit it tomorrow," I said. His face turned red from embarrassment and anger at my words. "Watch carefully. I'll make you regret how you've treated and looked down on me," I warned him. "My name is Helen. I'm 26 years old and a housewife. 2 years ago, I used to work for a mobile company. I met Anand, my boss, when I was 24. We quickly fell in love and got married. Anand, who is 3 years older than me, was very reliable, especially when he was teaching me at work. I was really thankful for his clear guidance. We became good friends and often went out to dinner. When he asked me out, I was thrilled, especially since I had never dated anyone before. It's a bit embarrassing, but I was always more interested in cartoon characters than real men. Seeing my high school and college friends getting married one after another made me feel pressured. When I fell in love with Anton, I promised myself he would be my first and last love. I was thrilled when we started dating and then got married a year later. Anton was good-looking and popular with our female colleagues. I was proud to be his wife and enjoyed all the congratulations and well wishes we received. I felt incredibly happy, not knowing what would come next. The day after we officially registered our marriage, I mentioned to Anton, "Now that we're married, you expect me to quit my job, right?" Anton surprised me with his response. "I've always wanted my wife to focus only on home matters. Don't worry, I can support us with my income," he said. "But this is so sudden. You never told me this before," I replied. Anton had never mentioned wanting me to quit my job before we got married. I had taken the job based on my father's advice, and quitting without notice didn't feel right. I wanted to explain, but Anton's silent gaze made me stop talking. "I should have told you earlier, but it's too late now. Starting tomorrow, you don't need to go to work. I'll take care of the handover," Anton said. The news that I had to start staying home from work the next day hit me so suddenly that I felt dizzy. But Anton's decision was final, and since he had been my boss, I couldn't argue. Even though I had to leave my job without a proper goodbye, I was committed to making our marriage work. I focused on household tasks and tried hard to meet Anton's expectations. I cooked meals, especially his favorites, hoping for some recognition. Even though Anton never commented on the food, I longed for a bit of appreciation, especially after giving up my job and losing my previous recognition. One day I asked Anton, "Is my jacket clean? I have an important meeting tomorrow." "Yes, of course," he replied, showing his old-fashioned and commanding side. I reminded myself how lucky I was to be married to him and tried to meet his expectations. Without a personal income, I relied on Anton for everything. Our relationship often felt more like a boss and an employee than a husband and wife, but overall, our married life was relatively smooth. One day I fell ill and couldn't get out of bed. Feeling too weak to do housework, I planned to catch up on it the next day. Anton came into the room and, looking angry, demanded, "What are you doing? Get up and make some food," while kicking the blanket off me. I explained, "I'm sorry, I'm not feeling well." Instead of understanding, Anton scowled and said, "You don't work, and you're lying down just because you're a bit sick." Pathetic. I was shocked that he would insist on chores even when I was sick. I never expected him to be like this before we got married. Maybe I should have noticed, but it was too much. I ended up doing the chores while crying. A few days later, I realized I had missed my period and felt a rush of panic. I went to the drugstore and bought a pregnancy test, which turned out to be positive. Overjoyed, I cried tears of happiness and decided to tell Anton as soon as he came home from work. That night, Anton came home after midnight, smelling strongly of alcohol and staggering as he walked. I was surprised at how drunk he was, especially since he hadn't warned me. Despite having prepared dinner and wanting to share my pregnancy news, I decided to tell him right away. My excitement got the best of me, and I shared the news with my tipsy husband. "I haven't seen a doctor yet, so it's not confirmed," I said, trying to share our exciting news. But Anton's face turned dark as he replied, "A child? What have you done?" His tone was colder and more severe than I had ever heard. "I don't want a child. This is the worst. If you're going to have it, you'll have to take care of it yourself." His harsh words shocked me. He angrily undressed and went to the bathroom. I couldn't understand why he was being so irresponsible about our baby. The happiness I had felt moments ago was replaced with deep sadness. He had never said he didn't want children before. We hadn't been using contraception, so I assumed we both wanted a family. As I was hanging up Anton's jacket and about to take his shirt to the laundry, I noticed something in the pocket. "What's this?" It was a piece of paper that felt like a receipt. At first, I thought it was from tonight's event and was about to throw it away, but then I saw the name of the place. Is this a motel? My hand shook as I realized it was indeed a motel receipt. This discovery shocked me deeply. I wondered why Anton would behave this way. Marriage is supposed to be about love between two people, especially since we'd only been married for just over a year. I had spent years dreaming of romantic relationships, but never really experienced one. I couldn't immediately accept this painful truth, but the idea of Anton cheating started to make sense. Were all my doubts about him using me as a servant while loving someone else true? Was this the reason he reacted so harshly to the news of my pregnancy? As I struggled with these thoughts, I started to feel nauseous and began to suspect that something was seriously wrong. It seemed like Anton had a mistress at my former workplace, and perhaps he wanted to marry me for stability rather than love. Everything started to make sense, and I felt like the line between reality and my imagination was blurring. Still, I couldn't ignore the hurtful things he said after I told him about the pregnancy. I decided to gather proof of Anton's infidelity. His cold behavior towards me made it clear that he was angry about the pregnancy. Even though I was dealing with morning sickness, he would deliberately eat strong-smelling foods around me and criticize my housework, making me redo things. It was tough on my pregnant body and heart, but I was determined to find out the truth. Anton never let go of his cell phone, even taking it with him to the bathroom, so I couldn't look at it. When I snuck into his room, it was always tidy, and there was nothing suspicious. He was very organized at work, and his desk was always spotless. It became clear that catching him red-handed would be difficult. I frequently checked his pockets for receipts or other evidence, but my search was coming up empty. I thought about hiring a private detective, but I didn't have the money for that. I was lost in thought about my situation when I got an unexpected phone call from my father, who rarely called me. "Hello, it's me, your dad. How are you?" he asked. I was surprised to hear from him, given how busy he usually is. "Dad, what's going on? Aren't you swamped with work?" "My employees have been doing well, so I'm not that busy," he said. As the CEO of a company in Canada, my father had always been a workaholic. I didn't have many childhood memories of spending time with him, but I respected his dedication. I wondered why he was calling now. "So what's up?" I asked, waiting for him to explain. My father then shared something shocking. "Is that really true?" I asked, stunned by what he revealed. "Yes, he's not the type to lie." "I want you to trust me," my father said, trying to reassure me. At first, I was in shock and couldn't respond, but as I processed the information, I felt a sense of relief. "Thank you, Dad. I'll do my best," I said gratefully before ending the call. My investigation was finally showing results, and I felt a mix of relief and anger because of the ongoing tension with Anton. Despite being pregnant, Anton remained distant, which only deepened my resentment towards him. Months went by, and our relationship stayed strained. Then something happened that shattered our life. As I approached my 9th month of pregnancy, I lived in constant fear around Anton, trying to avoid him and leading a quiet, restricted life. One evening, while serving dinner as usual, Anton came home, and we sat at the dining table. As I ate silently, Anton suddenly slammed his fork down. "What is this? It's tasteless," Anton yelled, throwing the food I had cooked onto the floor. I was shocked by his outburst and struggled to understand what was happening. My frustration grew as I saw my meal discarded. Anton complained that my cooking had been bland recently, but I had been using less seasoning to make the meals healthier for everyone during my pregnancy. If he didn't like the taste, he could have added some salt himself. There was no need to throw the food on the floor. As I was about to speak up, Anton sneered and made a hurtful remark. "I don't want a woman with a belly like a monster. You'll have to raise the kid by yourself," he said with malice and a cruel smile. I had feared this day might come, though I had hoped for a different outcome. Quickly, I went to my room, grabbed some documents, and returned to show them to Anton. "Here are the divorce papers," I said, pushing the documents towards him. Anton looked stunned and asked, "What the hell? What's this all of a sudden?" "Well, it was your idea. Just sign it quickly. I'll submit it tomorrow," I said. I had been thinking about divorce ever since I suspected Anton's infidelity. With a baby on the way, I wasn't sure if I could manage on my own, but now I had a new plan. My determination seemed to anger Anton. His face turned red with rage. "Just wait. I'll make you regret every moment you looked down on me and tried to control me. Do you think you can manage without me? You'll have a baby to care for, and you'll regret it." I stayed firm and unshaken. "I'll be fine. Don't worry about me," I assured him, maybe annoyed by my resolve. Anton grabbed the divorce papers and started filling them out. "Here you go. If this is what you want, it's yours," he said. "Thank you," I replied. Anton probably didn't think I would actually go through with it, as he handed the papers over without much fuss. The next day, I submitted the divorce papers and left the house. I knew he'd be surprised when he came home from work to find out. After that, I moved to my parents' home. My father had returned to the US from Canada and suggested I stay with them. It was the right choice for me as I was fed up with life with Anton. I was deeply grateful to my father for his support. On the day I left our home, Anton called me 3 times, but I ignored each one. Eventually, he stopped calling. It became clear that I meant very little to him. He was probably happy with his mistress and might even be planning to remarry. I decided to move on from Anton. 6 months later, I had a baby who was born safely, and I was living happily with my parents. While enjoying this peaceful life, Anton called me again. At first, I ignored his calls, but after he persisted, I had no choice but to answer. "Hello, what do you want now?" I asked, tired of his calls. "Hey, what's going on? Why were you on that show? And since when are you the daughter of a CEO with millions of dollars?" Anton's voice was filled with surprise and anger. It turned out he had seen a TV show about my family's lifestyle, which aired after I moved back with my parents. After returning to my family's home, I was approached by a TV station because of my father's role as CEO of a major global tech company. The show featured the luxurious lifestyle of CEO families, and they filmed at our house, discussing our family's wealth, which was estimated at around $10 million. I never expected Anton would see that show, but the reach of television is truly powerful. "Oh, by the way, I didn't mention that I inherited $33 million, which is why I was able to divorce you," I said. My father had told me about this inheritance, and it gave me the confidence to live comfortably even after leaving Anton. Anton's reaction was immediate and furious. "What? That's unfair. Why didn't you tell me about this before? Half of it is mine, right? Give me the money now." I replied calmly, just as I suspected after seeing the show. All you can think about is getting money from me. Gifts from parents aren't included in the property division, and don't forget your own actions. Anton looked confused and asked, "What are you talking about?" "I'm tired of your anger, Anton. You called me. You should know you can't blame me for what you did. You cheated, didn't you? With your new wife, who's a junior from your company? You started seeing her even before we were married," I said. Anton was clearly shocked by what I knew. I finally had the upper hand. "Did you think I wouldn't find out? My father has many connections in your company, and one of them told me about your affair. I haven't mentioned it before, but I will be demanding child support," I declared. Anton, still in denial, argued, "Stop kidding. Why should I pay child support? It's all your fault. You got pregnant on your own and didn't keep up with the housework. It's your fault." I was stunned by Anton's refusal to take responsibility and his blame shifting. I couldn't believe I had ever been married to someone so unreasonable. It was clear I had made the right decision to leave him. "Anton, I'm broke. My wife spent all my money, and now I'm in debt," he lamented, but I wasn't moved by his pleas. I was angry and incredulous at his refusal to acknowledge his mistakes. I had no desire to deal with someone so unreasonable ever again. Gripping my phone tightly, I prepared to end the conversation. "What are you talking about? Do you even realize how ridiculous you sound? I never want to deal with you again. I'll have my lawyer handle the child support. Don't call me again, and you won't see the child anymore. Goodbye." After expressing my frustration, I quickly hung up the phone. I blocked Anton's number, took a deep breath, and felt a sense of relief. It was over now, and I hoped I wouldn't receive any more calls from him. I was determined to protect my peaceful life. Just then, I heard my baby crying from the other room and rushed to comfort them. It turned out that Anton started paying child support every month. A former colleague of mine mentioned that Anton's new wife was a big spender, and he ended up using debts to cover his living expenses. It seemed Anton had hoped to get a share of my inheritance by reaching out to me, but since he didn't get any money from me, he was now facing more expenses than his income could handle. He struggled, possibly because things were going poorly or because he couldn't stand being looked down upon by his colleagues. Adding to his troubles, he only started searching for a new job after leaving his previous one, which led him to financial difficulties. Hearing this didn't make me feel sorry for him. I felt he deserved the hardships he was facing. The harsh words and cold behavior he showed me were unforgettable, and I hoped he got what he deserved. Meanwhile, I'm enjoying life with my parents and my baby. With no financial worries, I'm excited about the future, especially since my father mentioned passing the company on to me. I'm ready to work hard, just like my dedicated father.
13 years ago, Michael angrily handed me divorce papers, announcing that he sold our house to move in with someone else. I didn't fully understand it at the time. He coldly instructed me, "Emily, the divorce is final. Take Kevin and leave." Those words lingered in my mind. Years later, Kevin mentioned something surprising after a job interview. Outraged, I confronted the HR interviewer, asking if their company tolerated affairs. To my shock, the interviewer smiled. It was my ex-husband, Michael, in disguise. I'm Emily, 48, working at an insurance call center, raising Kevin on my own since Michael abandoned us 13 years ago. I met Michael at 20, working in a pharmaceutical subsidiary. Despite an unexpected pregnancy, he proposed, assuring my father he'd make me happy. We had a simple wedding, and I became a homemaker as Michael returned to the main office. From that point onward, I dedicated myself to managing our home. When Kevin entered elementary school, we acquired a house with assistance from Michael's family. Though I believed I was leading a content life, I ignored the fact that Michael was spending less time at home as Kevin grew older. Marrying at 20, I had no concept of a typical married life and didn't question not knowing Michael's colleagues or superiors. Looking back, there were numerous signs pointing towards our eventual divorce. Then, on Kevin's 14th birthday, Michael dropped a bombshell. I've already filed for divorce and sold the house, so pack up and leave. In an instant, I went from being a happy 35-year-old homemaker to a single mother with a 14-year-old son. When I returned to my parents' home unannounced, my brother and his wife treated me with indifference. By then, my father had passed away, and the house was now owned by my brother and his wife. My mother, around 60 at the time, struggled against my strong-willed sister-in-law and my forthright nieces. Amidst all this, Kevin and I were told, "You can stay temporarily, but find a job and move out soon." At that moment, I couldn't think of any job I could immediately secure. I was a high school graduate office worker with no special skills. Nonetheless, I had to figure something out for both myself and my son Kevin. I scoured job listings, searching for something that could sustain us. Fortunately, Kevin, at 14, had enough maturity. They say it's a challenging age, but he displayed better sense than a mother with a young child to care for. I took up a job at an insurance company's call center, drawing on my prior office work experience. Initially a contract employee, I eventually secured a full-time position after a few years. The world of the call center was unfamiliar, and it left me mentally and physically drained initially. However, with time, I realized how little I knew. Being a high school graduate at the time of my divorce, and coming from a family with limited education, my lack of knowledge contributed to financial difficulties post-divorce, which was triggered by infidelity. In hindsight, I should have sought alimony and child support from my ex-husband Michael, but the idea never crossed my mind. My family, including my mother and brother, shared a similar lack of awareness. If my brother had shown even a bit of concern, he might have suggested something through his acquaintances. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. It was only after joining the insurance company and gaining new insights that I realized I had been treated unfairly. By then, too much time had elapsed. That's why I wished for Kevin to pursue as much education as he desired. Knowledge and wisdom can be crucial. I didn't want him to face the same challenges as I did. Fast forward 13 years, my job and life are stable. Kevin secured admission to a prestigious science university, even entering the doctoral program. As a mother, it was astonishing, and he mentioned managing the tuition himself amid his demanding studies. He secured non-repayable scholarships independently, and I merely had to sign the parent section. Throughout his university and graduate school years, he excelled, attracting attention from various companies. As the saying goes, a healthy hen lays white eggs. Kevin's future appears promising. Yet, occasionally, that fateful day when Michael left me still casts a shadow in my thoughts. It happened suddenly. Michael stormed in, threw a crumpled paper at Kevin and me. It was a copy of the divorce papers. I didn't recall signing them, but my name was there in handwriting similar to mine. Confused, I asked what he meant. Michael coldly stated, "I've sold the house because I'm moving in with her." The divorce blindsided me. "Emily, it's final. Take Kevin and leave," he demanded, threatening us to vacate within 3 days. At 35, after being a homemaker for 14 years, I felt lost and headed to my parents' house, haunted by Michael's words. Perhaps I should forget it, but Kevin and I now lead a stable life. It's not lingering attachment. It's frustration at my past helplessness and resentment towards Michael. I realize now that I can do something about it. On a lazy weekend, my phone rang incessantly from an unknown number. Ignoring it, I later heard a voicemail from my ex-mother-in-law requesting to speak to Kevin. Puzzled, I didn't address it directly. That evening, Kevin returned in a suit, laughing uproariously when I mentioned the call. So she did come after all. He explained it was a job interview, but the twist was the pharmaceutical company itself. He mentioned the same place where I used to work as an office clerk in a subsidiary. "Ah, it's not a coincidence," Kevin said casually. "By the way, the HR manager who conducted the interview was Michael Smith." "What did you say?" Funny thing is, this guy had no idea. You realized it, of course. After all, I didn't need such an interview in the first place. Why? This company came scouting for me, so there was no need for an interview. But as an HR manager, he must have seen your resume, right? He must have. But my appearance has changed a lot since middle school, right? Hairstyle, vibe, all that? Well, that's true. 13 years is a long time. Plus, I doubt he even remembered my face from back then. Upon reflection, that was true. I had been so immersed in my own thoughts, forgetting that Kevin had also distanced himself from Michael. More importantly, given my current address and academic background, even with the same name, he wouldn't recognize me as his son. That might be true. 13 years ago, in his second year of middle school, Kevin had been at best slightly above average in his class. But after our divorce and his transfer to a new school, he began studying unusually hard. His grades suddenly shot to the top. He attended a high school matching his academic performance, maintaining nearly the top spot in science classes. Then he proceeded to a prestigious national university recommended by a professor. In his third year, he completed 5 years of graduate school, from his master's to his doctorate, achieving significant accomplishments in complex fields that I didn't quite understand. The scouting was due to these achievements, desired by several companies in the chemical and physical sciences. In other words, I was the one choosing them, Kevin said nonchalantly. That's why I asked for the interview. I had researched and knew he was the HR manager. I was surprised at his initiative, but he didn't change his expression even when he saw me. The interview was standard, except Kevin had more questions to ask. So I asked the interviewer, "Does your company condone infidelity?" His face then lit up with a smile I had never seen before. And what did he reply, this HR manager? "Of course, it's not ethically acceptable," he said. Hilarious, right? So I continued, "That's strange. Then why are you here?" His face instantly froze. Kevin couldn't stop laughing then. Thankfully, the executive next to him asked me what I meant by that. "That's when I pulled this out," he said, displaying a crumpled piece of paper. It was a copy of the divorce papers Michael had hurled at me. "This is a copy of the divorce papers my mother was deceived into submitting by this man. What does your company think of this? You kept that copy all this time? I thought I had thrown it away. In fact, I was sure I had. I didn't want to see it. I thought I had to throw everything away and leave. Yeah, I picked it up after you threw it away. That's why it's all wrinkled like this, kept in a clear file. I thought it should never be lost. Why? Because this is evidence of what he did to you and of forging a private document. Oh, that's not all. There's forgery of private documents and, well, other things. Plus, the divorce papers themselves were invalid at that time, so if he married another woman, it would be bigamy." Bigamy? I'm not an expert, so I asked a friend from the law department at university about it, whether this could be a crime. A crime? Yeah, a clear crime. So I told them right there, "Isn't this forgery of a private document?" I give a copy of the copy to the executive. "I see, the original of the copy is here, so a copy of the copy but with my fingerprints on the copy. I'm not handing over the actual evidence." And guess what he did next? What happened then? Suddenly, he stood up and shouted, "You're treating your father like a criminal." And then he kept insisting to the executive that what I was saying was a blatant lie, a misunderstanding. I couldn't help but feel amused. What was that man thinking? But you've got to give it to the executive. He seemed to understand what I was getting at. He turned the questions towards him. You know there's a hierarchy in companies, right? I guess he was aiming for the executive's position. It seemed like the executive was assessing his character first. He kicked him out of the room, then turned to me and said, "Did you ask for this interview not for a job, but for this?" "Yeah, I did," apologize. "I'm truly grateful for the scouting from your company. It's a very attractive company." But I wondered, what if it's an unethical company that would just keep a person like him, bold as brass? I couldn't believe he could say that so smoothly in an interview. The executive was really a great person, whether or not I joined. He thanked me for letting him know. He mentioned when Dad remarried after the divorce. He wondered why Dad chose a much younger woman. And he remembered you, Mom. Really? Yeah, you said our wedding was small scale, right? The executive was there as one of the few guests, as a supervisor back then. That's so. But he said that Dad had been telling everyone around him that he was the one cheated on. But he didn't ask for alimony and just divorced. However, the executive had his doubts about why Dad didn't take custody of me. He guessed it might be me from the photo and the name. What? At that time, you didn't have the knowledge to fight back, so we were thrown out. That's true. I'm so sorry. If it were now, I'd definitely fight with a lawyer. But back then, It's okay. I know you were a full-time homemaker before being suddenly thrown out and had to start working to raise me. Mom, I don't remember much about Dad. He was always gone, maybe working, maybe not. Yes, Michael was hardly ever home back then. Perhaps marrying me was a mistake for him in the first place. He rarely took me to his family's home, only during holidays, and when we went, I was just made to help in the kitchen, and otherwise, we just missed each other with his work. He said he bought a house, but he decided it, and suddenly we were living there. I realized in elementary school that our family was different, so I acted out a bit back then. What did you do? Yeah, an early case of teenage rebellion. So right when I entered middle school, I sensed there was another woman. What are you saying? I didn't tell you because I thought it would make you sad. But I regretted not speaking up, especially when he threw the divorce papers at you and told you to leave. His voice was strained. I had never heard Kevin speak like that before. Mom, I decided I needed a weapon that would make me indispensable. A weapon. Something that would let me eventually hold him accountable for what he did. Then Kevin said, I hate to say it, but I took your situation as a lesson on what not to do. A lesson. Yeah, maybe he easily discarded you, and nobody could oppose it because you and your family didn't have the knowledge to fight back. To be honest, I'm also angry at your brothers. You're not going to your uncles? No, too much hassle. But even if I get a good job and succeed, I'll never associate with them. Oh, except Grandma. Really? I felt a bit relieved. Yeah, because Grandma remembered your situation and repeatedly told me she was sorry. When did she tell you this? After I entered university. My cousins from your brother's side were acting flirty because I was in that university, which was annoying. I was shocked. I had no idea my nieces behaved like that. Hey, Mom, what if we took Grandma in? She's always been sorry towards you. It seems painful watching her have to be careful around my aunt and them. Thank you. After we finished talking, I brought up something that had been on my mind. By the way, I've been getting a lot of calls from unknown numbers lately. Let me see, Kevin said, taking my phone. Oh, this? It's his family's number. The executive told me, Kevin said dismissively. Then he called them and put it on speaker mode. Hello? Is that Kevin? It was my ex-mother-in-law's voice on the other end. Kevin muttered under his breath about her calling him by his first name. Yes, I heard from your father. You went all the way to a doctoral program at that university, and you're getting company offers. To think that a young man born to that woman turned out so well. It must be thanks to our family's blood. Kevin muttered to himself again. Hey, would you like to be adopted into our family? You're going to be busy and need money, right? Better than staying with that poor woman. Plus, you're old enough now, right? We can arrange a good marriage for you. How about it? Sounds good, right, Kevin? Are you listening? I apologize for being such a woman. I spoke coldly into the phone. By the way, did you think I had cheated? Well, I see. It's not true. In that case, Kevin says he won't hold back. Let me pass the phone to him. Long time no see. I was surprised to hear from the company executive that my mom was accused of cheating. So you're part of it too. No, you were deceived by Michael. You're calling my mom that woman, but you realize you were complicit in a crime, right? What? Unfortunately, the statute of limitations has passed. But your son committed bigamy by forging divorce papers and remarrying. It's embarrassing that I'm related to such a person. Of course, I want nothing to do with his parents. Oh, and a lawyer will be contacting your son soon for me and my mom. You don't want the inheritance. When I die, it'll all go to you. Kevin snorted. I don't need that. You should worry about the alimony payments instead. He ended the call. Did I go too far? I shook my head vigorously, and laughter bubbled up from within. That's the spirit. If you're going this far, I need to step up too. Kevin patted my back with encouragement. After that, I got a lawyer through Kevin's friend and started working on an alimony claim. The usual statute of limitations for alimony claims due to infidelity is 3 years. But I learned about something called an exclusion period. It's valid for 20 years from the act of infidelity. I found out about Michael's cheating 13 years ago, but never investigated who he remarried or the details. I couldn't bear to think about it and didn't have the capacity. But I looked into it again. Included in the alimony claim were the facts of him forging the divorce papers and then submitting a marriage registration, constituting forgery and bigamy. Although we couldn't pursue criminal charges due to the statute of limitations, it served as a weapon for the alimony claim. I claimed alimony from Michael and his current wife and 4 years of child support for Kevin. After that, my phone started ringing nonstop again. Bigamy. What have you told him? You're ruining me. You want to destroy my wife and kids too. I let you live comfortably for 14 years. Don't think this will end here. So I replied just once. Why not sell your house then? And then I changed my phone number. As a result of our double attack, Michael paid the alimony, was demoted from HR manager, and transferred to a far-off factory as an assistant manager. I heard this from the executive I met again. Apparently, his new position is akin to a nominal busybody, unable to defy the factory manager. Indeed, even with the statute of limitations, now that several of his crimes have come to light, his reputation has hit rock bottom. He was on the elite track in the company, but now it's over. The pharmaceutical company's factory is located far from the capital region. Michael had to sell his apartment and turn it into alimony for me as part of his transfer. That was the only way he could pay the amount we demanded. Moreover, his wife and children had to move with him. It seems she had no one else to rely on. She married him at 20, just like me, and had been a homemaker ever since, enjoying the status of a high-ranking husband's wife. That backfired. She wanted to stay in the capital region with her children, but that was impossible. Her parents' home is as rural as the place he was transferred to. Apparently, she's not well liked by her in-laws, but I have my doubts about the in-laws too, given how they treated me. I'm not surprised, but marrying off their son to a 20-year-old bride twice should have been a sign for them to sort out their son. They should have advised their criminal son before cutting off their incompetent grandchildren. Well, that's probably why they cozied up to Kevin. Here's a brilliant grandchild. But that's irrelevant to Kevin. By the way, I heard an interesting story after settling the alimony issue. My lawyer shared this with me. Wow, that guy is really a city boy through and through. What do you mean? His new place of work requires a car. I clapped my hands in realization. He's over 50 and rushing to a driving school to desperately get a driver's license. both he and his wife. His wife, too. Without a car, they can't survive there. For things like taking kids to and from school, shopping. Also, in such rural areas, you won't get hired for part-time work without transportation. I laughed, realizing the situation. I have a driver's license. My mother insisted I get it, even lending me money for it. That was the right decision. Just hearing about them is hilarious. A proud former elite over 50 chased by mundane tasks, learning the hard reality of getting a license from strict driving instructors. And the following spring, Kevin entered a training institute of another company, finally able to focus solely on his research, enjoying every day. Revenge is over. Now it's time for fun. For my youth. Well, an early marriage isn't always good, right? By the way, did you think I had cheated? Well, that's... Oh, I see. It's not true. In that case, Kevin says he won't hold back. Let me pass the phone to him. Long time no see. I was surprised to hear from the company executive that my mom was accused of cheating. So you're part of it too? No, you were deceived by Michael. You're calling my mom that woman, but you realize you were complicit in a crime, right? What? Unfortunately, the statute of limitations has passed. That your son committed bigamy by forging divorce papers and remarrying. It's embarrassing that I'm related to such a person. Of course, I want nothing to do with his parents. Oh, and the lawyer will be contacting your son soon for me and my mom. You don't want the inheritance. When I die, it'll all go to you. Kevin snorted. I don't need that. You should worry about the alimony payments instead. He ended the call. Did I go too far? I shook my head vigorously, and laughter bubbled up from within. That's the spirit. If you're going this far, I need to step up too. Kevin patted my back with encouragement. After that, I got a lawyer through Kevin's friend and started working on an alimony claim. The usual statute of limitations for alimony claims due to infidelity is 3 years, but I learned about something called an exclusion period. It's valid for 20 years from the act of infidelity. I found out about Michael's cheating 13 years ago, but never investigated who he remarried or the details. I couldn't bear to think about it and didn't have the capacity. But I looked into it again. Included in the alimony claim were the facts of him forging the divorce papers and then submitting a marriage registration, constituting forgery and bigamy. Although we couldn't pursue criminal charges due to the statute of limitations, it served as a weapon for the alimony claim. I claimed alimony from Michael and his current wife and 4 years of child support for Kevin. After that, my phone started ringing nonstop again. Bigamy. What have you told him? You're ruining me. You want to destroy my wife and kids too. I let you live comfortably for 14 years. Don't think this will end here. So I replied just once, why not sell your house then? And then I changed my phone number. As a result of our double attack, Michael paid the alimony, was demoted from HR manager, and transferred to a far-off factory as an assistant manager. I heard this from the executive I met again. Apparently, his new position is akin to a nominal busybody, unable to defy the factory manager. Indeed, even with the statute of limitations, now that several of his crimes have come to light, his reputation has hit rock bottom. He was on the elite track in the company, but now it's over. The pharmaceutical company's factory is located far from the capital region. Michael had to sell his apartment and turn it into alimony for me as part of his transfer. That was the only way he could pay the amount we demanded. Moreover, his wife and children had to move with him. It seems she had no one else to rely on. She married him at 20, just like me, and had been a homemaker ever since, enjoying the status of a high-ranking husband's wife. That backfired. She wanted to stay in the capital region with her children, but that was impossible. Her parents' home is as rural as the place he was transferred to. Apparently, she's not well liked by her in-laws, but I have my doubts about the in-laws too, given how they treated me. I'm not surprised, but marrying off their son to a 20-year-old bride twice should have been a sign for them to sort out their son. They should have advised their criminal son before cutting off their incompetent grandchildren. Well, that's probably why they cozied up to Kevin. Ah, here's a brilliant grandchild. But that's irrelevant to Kevin. By the way, I heard an interesting story after settling the alimony issue. My lawyer shared this with me. Wow, that guy is really a city boy through and through. What do you mean? His new place of work requires a car. I clapped my hands in realization. He's over 50 and rushing to a driving school to desperately get a driver's license. Both he and his wife too. Without a car, they can't survive there. For things like taking kids to and from school, shopping. Also, in such rural areas, you won't get hired for part-time work without transportation. I laughed, realizing the situation. I have a driver's license. My mother insisted I get it, even lending me money for it. That was the right decision. Just hearing about them is hilarious. A proud former elite over 50 chased by mundane tasks, learning the hard reality of getting a license from strict driving instructors. And the following spring, Kevin entered a training institute of another company, finally able to focus solely on his research, enjoying every day. Revenge is over. Now it's time for fun. For my youth? Well, an early marriage isn't always good, right? My mother, who now lives with us, often uses exactly. Kevin, who never had time for a girlfriend, now has the chance to find someone right for him. With Kevin's employment, we moved to a slightly bigger place, roughly midway between our workplaces. For a while, the three of us want to peacefully enjoy these long-awaited days.
She just passed away. The stunned look on David's face as he stared at me standing in the doorway was forever etched in my mind. He seemed unable to grasp the sudden news of our daughter's death. What are you talking about? Stop with the cruel pranks. That's a terrible joke. David mocked me as I stood there soaked from the rain. It's not a lie. How could you let this happen? I'll handle the funeral arrangements, so please stay away from the house for a while. Goodbye. Seeing me trembling from head to toe, David finally seemed to realize the gravity of the situation, leaning back in shock and muttering, "Is this for real?" But his reaction seemed so distant, so detached, it grated on my nerves. I turned on my heel, rage burning inside me. I'll never forgive him. I'll make sure he pays, even if I have to drag him to hell myself. My name is Juliana Bridges. I'm 38 years old and work at an advertising agency. Our family consists of my husband David and our 8-year-old daughter Mia. We aren't rich, but we lead a comfortable life thanks to my well-paying job at the agency. I earn a hefty salary, so I've never had to worry about spending money each month. We've even been able to save up for Mia's college tuition. Considering the cost of living and our home mortgage, we've always had some extra money left over. David was well aware of my high salary, and perhaps his pride was hurt because a year ago, he quit his job and started freelancing in web design. He said he switched to freelancing because his salary job had hit its pay ceiling, but I was skeptical about how much one could really earn as a freelancer. Of course, I objected when he said he wanted to quit. I thought it would be safer to stay in his job, get his full retirement benefits, and then think about other options. But David was adamant about freelancing, so that's what he did. Ever since he began freelancing, David has been working from home. Maybe his stated reason for quitting his job was just a cover and he was really tired of the office politics. Either way, I had to get used to a new routine where David was always home when I left for work. At first, Maya seemed happy that her dad was always at home when she came back from school, but lately she seemed somewhat discontented. She probably feels like she's being constantly watched. She's only 8, but Maya is more mature than her classmates. So our life was going along without any major issues, but I didn't notice that the cracks started appearing when David began working from home. When David started working from home, I asked him if he could help a little with the household chores. Can you help with things like cleaning and laundry? I'll still cook the meals. I always have excuses. Why do I have to do housework? You're home more and you have more free time. It would be nice if you could help out a bit when you're not too tired. Free? Just because I'm a freelancer doesn't mean I'm not busy. In fact, I've got a lot on my plate. I can't deal with household stuff on top of that. David brushed aside my modest requests. I understand that freelancing can be more unstable and mentally taxing compared to a regular salary job. That's one reason why I didn't want him to switch in the first place. but household chores are nobody's specific job, and I've been doing them all alone even though we've both been working. I thought he could share some of the load. But I work too, you know. It should be equal. You've managed everything by yourself up until now. Don't start complaining now. David, convinced he was in the right, wouldn't listen to me at all. In the end, I continued to handle all the household chores as usual. I don't assume he's not busy just because he works from home, but whenever I return home late at night, I'd invariably find David sprawled in front of the TV or deeply engrossed in his smartphone. Is dinner ready? He'd ask with an air of entitlement, which always infuriated me. What's more, since working from home, he seemed to become more concerned about cleanliness, always demanding that I clean the house more thoroughly, pointing out every little piece of dirt on the floor, the windows in the bathroom. If you're so concerned, why don't you clean it up yourself? I'm only human. I can't get to everything, I'd reply. Are you talking back to me? Clean up your own mess. It's our family's home. It's not like I'm the only one making it dirty. Yet David would go off on these bizarre tangents, and I was utterly baffled by his logic. Maya would quietly listen to our exchanges from a distance. You know, Dad's always glued to his phone, she'd say. I wish we could go out together on weekends, but Daddy's always busy on his phone, Maya said one Sunday morning as I was preparing breakfast. Apparently, Maya had asked David to go out and play the previous evening, but he'd refuse, barely looking up from his phone. That's true, he's always on that phone, I acknowledged. He's been like that since before you come home from work. Sometimes he's on calls too. Calls? Yeah, he always sounds friendly, and I can hear a woman's voice. From Maya's account, it didn't seem like David was talking to a client or a colleague. I tried to think of who he could be talking to so frequently. As a freelancer, I was unfamiliar with the world of freelancing, so I didn't know, but the mention of a woman's voice definitely bothered me. Could he be having an affair? It wasn't unthinkable. He had started working from home only a few months ago, and he now had more free time than when he had a regular job. Trying not to let Maya see my agitation, I focused on preparing breakfast. Several months passed since David started freelancing. He still never helped with any of the household chores, and he began spending whole days away from home during the weekends. I have work to do. Freelancers don't get days off, he'd say as he left the house, dressed sharper than usual, even wearing cologne and accessories he didn't normally use. I had my suspicions, but with no evidence, confronting him would be pointless. Besides, even if David was cheating, I was torn about what I should do. I knew it would be better to part ways. But thinking of Mia, it wasn't an easy decision. Every day, I agonized over the potential consequences for Mia of taking her father away from her. Our lives continued in this way, but a turning point was soon to come. One Monday morning, as I was preparing for work, Maya didn't get up as usual, and I was getting anxious that she'd be late for school. Mia, it's morning. You need to get up, or you'll be late for school. When I went to Maya's room to wake her up, she looked completely drained. I rushed to her side and placed my hand on her forehead. You're burning up, Mia. Yeah, she murmured weakly. I got a thermometer and took her temperature. It read 103 degrees Fahrenheit. Panic set in as I realized I couldn't take the day off today. I had an important meeting. While I was panicking, David entered the room. What happened? Maya is running a high fever. I can't take the day off from work today. Maybe we should call a babysitter. A babysitter? I'll take care of her. What? Just let her rest. I can make her some soup. It'll be fine. I was utterly taken aback by David's sudden willingness to take care of Mia. David, who had never lifted a finger to help with household chores or child rearing, was now offering to care for our daughter when she was sick. Unbelievable. Though I found it hard to believe, I decided to trust him given the urgency of the situation. All right, thank you. There's some fruit in the fridge. Give her some if she feels like eating. Got it. Relieved by David's reassuring response, I hurriedly got ready and left the house. I was deeply concerned about Mia, but arriving at work on time was my top priority for the moment. By the time I reached my office in New York, the skies had darkened and it had started raining. Fortunately, I had a foldable umbrella with me, so I reached the office without getting wet. The meeting began in the afternoon as scheduled, but I couldn't stop thinking about Mia. The office was abuzz due to the sound of heavy rain and strong winds from outside. Come to think of it, wasn't there news about a hurricane approaching? I'd been so busy lately that I hadn't been keeping up with the weather updates, but I remembered a warning about a hurricane making landfall tonight. During the meeting, all of my colleagues, including myself, were constantly distracted by the storm outside, frequently glancing out the windows. By 7:00 p.m., when I was finally done with work and heading home, the earlier storm had turned into a torrential downpour, causing several train delays. The train I was supposed to catch was also delayed, and the platform was packed with people. I was really worried about Mia, who was running a high fever and couldn't bear the thought of waiting there. I hurriedly left the station and began looking for a taxi. There were many others waiting for taxis too, so it took quite a while, but after about 30 minutes, I finally managed to hail one. After a 30-minute ride, I arrived home but was speechless at the sight that greeted me. To my horror, Maya was lying unconscious in front of our entrance. I quickly scooped her up. "Mia, are you okay? What happened?" Seeing me might have comforted her because after she whispered, "Daddy," she just slumped, looking exhausted. Despite being drenched in rain, her body was burning up. I turned to the taxi I had just gotten out of and knocked on the window. "I'm sorry. I need you again. Please take us to the nearest hospital." Seeing Maya's condition and my desperation, the driver quickly opened the door, understanding the gravity of the situation. I quickly hopped back into the taxi. "I need to get to the nearest hospital, fast." Mia, I kept calling out to her throughout the ride. I felt that if I didn't, something terrible might happen to her. I desperately wanted to know why she was outside in the first place, especially during a storm. But right now, saving her was more important. Despite the heavy rain and slow-moving traffic, we finally reached the hospital. "Ma'am, do take care, especially if you're heading back in this storm," the kind taxi driver said as he dropped us off. "Thank you so much." With a kind-hearted driver seeing me off, I rushed Mia into the hospital. Even though the hospital was busy with many patients, the receptionist quickly realized the urgency upon seeing Mia's condition and got her immediate attention. 30 minutes later, a doctor finally examined Mia, informing me that she was semi-conscious due to a high fever. Thankfully, she had no physical injuries. If her fever reduced, she should be okay. However, given that she'd apparently been outside in the rain for hours with that fever, she had to be admitted immediately. "Mia, I'm so sorry. I hope you feel better soon," I whispered. "Ma'am," a nurse said, "we'll take good care of her. You should rest today." "Thank you." After spending 5 hours at the hospital, endlessly staring at Mia's pained face as she slept, a nurse finally approached me. Though I wanted to stay by Mia's side, I was exhausted both physically and mentally. Having worked all day and then seeing Mia in this state had left me spent, I decided it was best to let the nurses handle it and head home. Everything that happened to Mia was undoubtedly David's fault. Maya murmuring "Daddy" before passing out was evidence enough. It was inconceivable that Mia, with such a high fever, would willingly go outside, especially not during a storm. The more I thought about what David had done, the angrier I became, unable to comprehend or forgive him. All the way home, I pondered what to say to him. If he hears that Mia is okay, he might think it's all right to continue with his reckless behavior in the future. I absolutely don't want that to happen. I needed him to deeply reflect on his actions even more than feeling remorse. With a certain resolve, I headed home. When I arrived, wet from the rain, David was casually fiddling with his smartphone. Noticing me, he looked up in surprise. "Hey, where's Mia? Wasn't she sleeping at the entrance? She said she wanted to play outside. I told her not to, but she wouldn't listen." Seeing David ask that with such nonchalance made my anger boil over. Maya went out on her own? He's the one who tossed her out in the first place. I clenched my fists tightly and replied, "She just passed away." "What?" David stared at me with a dumbfounded look as I stood in the doorway, drenched from the rain. The shock of hearing that his daughter had died seemed too much for him to grasp. "What are you talking about? Stop playing sick jokes. That's in bad taste." The nerve of him to mock me as I stood there, drenched from the rain. "It's not a lie. What have you done? I'll handle the funeral arrangements, so stay away from the house for a while. Goodbye." Seeing me shaking with rage, it finally hit David how serious the situation was, and he blurted out, "Are you for real?" But his reaction seemed so detached, as if it was happening to someone else, which irritated me even more. I turned on my heels, a fury inside me blazing. I won't ever forgive him. I'll drag him down to hell if I have to. I stormed out of the house and headed straight for a hotel. I managed to find a vacant room and decided to stay there for a while. Although it would cost me, now wasn't the time to worry about money. I want to get back at David. If he felt remorse and changed his ways after hearing about Mia's death, I might reconsider my approach. But seeing that he didn't call or message me that day, my resolve only grew stronger. It was clear he couldn't care less about what happened to Mia. This only fueled my anger further, and I began to devise a plan to make him pay. The next morning, I woke up and immediately headed to the hospital. I got word that Mia had regained consciousness. "Mia, are you okay?" "Mom, yeah, I'm fine now. My fever's gone down." "Oh, thank goodness." I hugged Mia tightly and gently stroked her head. She giggled as if tickled by the gesture. Relishing the joy of Mia's return, I eventually pressed her for the truth. "Ma, what happened yesterday?" "Daddy kicked me out." "I knew it. He said I was in the way and told me to leave." Then a woman came in, and they chatted like they were close. "A woman? What did she look like?" I didn't get a good look, but she was young. She had bright red nails and wore skinny heels. I couldn't believe it. David was having an affair. Not only did he bring his mistress home on a day Maya had a high fever, but he also locked his own daughter outside. It was beyond comprehension. How could he do something so horrible? "I'm sorry, Mia. That must have been terrifying." "Yeah, but I was happy you came to save me, Mom." For David to put Mia through such trauma and think he could be happy with his mistress was unforgivable. I felt a burning rage consuming me. "By the way, Daddy said he's going to invite that lady over again next Sunday." "Next Sunday? That's the day I'm supposed to go on the company trip." He was planning to spend a fun day with his mistress while I was away. I was appalled, but it strengthened my resolve. "Thanks for telling me." I patted Mia's back, vowing to get back at David. The following Sunday, I decided to take Maya and return home. I informed my company that due to personal reasons, I wouldn't be able to attend the trip. After Maya was discharged, we had been staying at the hotel together. It had been a while since we were home, but as we approached the front door, it felt like we were entering someone else's house. "We're home," I said, trying to sound normal. As Maya and I entered, we saw unfamiliar high heels at the entrance, just as Mia had described. The thought of David and his mistress enjoying themselves deeper in the house made my skin crawl. David wasn't in the living room, so I headed to the bedroom, worried about what Mia might witness. I hesitated for a moment, but the room was quiet. Listening closely, I could hear David's voice coming from the bedroom. "You know, it really worked out for me with Mia gone. It made breaking up easier." "How can you say such a thing about your own daughter?" the woman responded. "But yeah, for me it was kind of lucky," David replied. Hearing them talk about Mia's supposed death as if it were a good thing made my head spin. It was clear David didn't feel an ounce of remorse. If that's the case, it's time to confront him directly. "Excuse us," I said as Maya and I appeared in the doorway. The two of them were taken aback, their eyes wide with shock. "Why the hell are you here? You said you were on a company trip. And why is Maya here?" David stammered. "What do you mean? Wasn't Maya supposed to be dead?" the woman added, looking confused. I explained calmly, the part about Mia being dead was a lie. "I'm sorry. I just wanted to see your reaction. I hoped you might show some remorse, but instead, you're here celebrating Mia's supposed death. That's just insane." "A lie? Damn it, you played with my feelings," David said, his fake concern turning to frustration. "Don't mess with me. You're the one who kicked Mia out of the house, right?" I shot back. "No, I didn't. Maya just—" "Daddy did kick me out," Maya interrupted. "He said I was in the way because he wanted to be with that woman." With Mia's swift revelation, David's face turned pale. "That's right," I said. "You did the worst possible thing, not just as a father, but as a human being." Maya was in such a condition that it wouldn't have been surprising if she had died, and you prioritized being with that woman over her, I said, pointing at the woman who had been silently watching our confrontation. "Oh, calling her my mistress? That's not right. She's a colleague from work." "Work? Wait, didn't you say you quit your job and you're freelancing now?" I asked, catching David off guard. David hesitated, his hasty lie inadvertently confirming she was indeed his mistress. "Well, we don't really need to ask her now, do we? Here's the evidence of your affair." Private investigators are quite something. They gathered this much evidence in just a week. I thrust a large envelope towards David. "That's right. After hearing about David's affair from Mia, I decided to get a thorough investigation, but I never imagined the evidence would pile up so quickly. Seems like David isn't very good at hiding things." Hesitantly, David opened the envelope, and as he pulled out the photos, he dropped them, scattering the evidence of his affair all over the floor. This is so unfair. Do you enjoy cornering someone like this and putting them in a situation where they can't escape? David protested, trying to deflect blame onto me, which I couldn't understand at all. I pulled out the business card of a divorce lawyer I had stashed in my bag and thrust it towards David. Unfair. Who's the real coward here? I see no worth in staying with someone so thoughtless any longer. Let's get a divorce. David's eyes widened as he stared at the business card. If he truly wanted to be with his mistress, he should have been willing to accept the divorce easily. Oh, and by the way, once we're separated, you'll, of course, be responsible for asset division and child support. I'll make sure to inform your company and your parents about everything. Be prepared for that. I glanced at the woman, his affair partner, when I said, "You." "What? Why me? I didn't know anything about this." The woman protested. "Don't you know you destroyed a family with your actions? You have to take responsibility," I told her firmly. The mistress began to panic and messed up her hair. Both Maya and I watched her coldly. Mia, still a child, seemed to understand what was going on and held my hand tightly. "If you don't have the money, find a way to get it. You two are in love, right? You should be able to overcome this together. Just never show up in front of Maya and me again. I'll give you the house, but you're still responsible for the mortgage," I said sternly. "Wait," David tried to protest, but I pulled Mia away. Yes, Maya was going to lose her father, but I had no regrets. I wouldn't put Maya in harm's way ever again. "We'll do our best from now on, okay, Mia?" I asked her. "Yeah." Maya looked surprisingly happy, which put me at ease. I decided to go back to my childhood home with Maya and stay there for a while. My parents were livid with David for cheating and putting Maya through such pain to the point where they felt like giving David a piece of their mind. But I managed to calm them down and avoid further issues. "You can stay here as long as you need," my mom said, and my dad nodded in agreement. "Thank you both," I said gratefully. Maya was thrilled to see her beloved grandparents. For now, everything seemed all right. As for David, he got a lawyer and managed to settle the child support and asset division in one payment. I couldn't imagine David having millions saved up, so he probably took on some debt. With the remaining mortgage to pay off, David must be stretched pretty thin right now. A coworker from my company who went to high school with David updated me about him. Apparently, he ended up breaking up with his mistress. David had boasted to her about having money, so when the truth came out, they quickly parted ways. David's income was already halved from what he used to make as a salary employee, so it's understandable. Now, in addition to his freelance work, he's scrambling with various part-time jobs. After losing his wife, daughter, and mistress, David will probably live a frugal life paying off his debts. He got what he deserved. I hope he learns from his hardships and regrets his actions. "Mommy, today at school, I made Grandparents' Day gifts for Grandma and Grandpa," Maya said excitedly. "Really? Let's get it to them later together, okay?" I replied, smiling at her. Seeing Maya so lively and happy, even without David around, made me feel content. From now on, I'm going to move forward at my own pace